the Christians or Caucasian people don't believe, they was tricked and believed that the law or the Old Testament was a curse. So what Jesus being dying relieved them of the curse and follow the laws of man until whenever.
What is the purpose of not just the 10 Commandments, but all the laws in the Old Testament? And second, are Christians today required to follow the 10 Commandments or any of the Old Testament laws? First of all, in the Old Testament, there are 3 types of commands, or laws God told his people to follow: civil laws, ceremonial laws, and moral laws. The civil laws instructed the people about day-to-day living, what to do, what not to do, and the punishments for breaking the laws. The ceremonial laws instructed the people about how to worship God. These laws included everything that was done in relation to the temple. And the moral laws, better known as the 10 Commandments, are essentially a summary of all of God's laws listed in the Old Testament, focusing on man's relationship with God and man's relationship with others. The purpose of the laws is multifaceted. They help us understand the nature and holiness of God, the sinfulness of man, and our dire need of a Redeemer to be saved. They identify love and hate, right and wrong, righteousness and worldliness. They serve as distinctive markers, identifying God's people, and they pointed to the coming of Jesus, illustrating his everlasting work done on our behalf. In short, the laws served as signs. They pointed to our God, to our faults, and to our need to have faith in the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Today, thanks to Jesus, Christians are not bound to the 613 Old Testament laws. Romans 10:4 says, "For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who..."
So now, in America, they don't, because they believe that, they don't look to the Old Testament for what to do, according to them. Now, the Old Testament got a lot of laws in it that if you applied it to the stuff that's taking place in their politics, a lot of that wouldn't even be here.
Exactly. And the Levitical codes goes through a lot of what you're talking about now.
So,
and if they would eat, see, you raise an excellent point. America's supposed to be a Christian nation and was built off, the Bible, etc., based upon the laws and all that kind of thing. Same with the UK and most Christian countries. But if they were really living like that, we would see, in essence, a true reflection of, if you do this, there's going to be a consequence.
Right.
It's not a wishy-washy kind of like maybe, coulda, shoulda. It's no, you did this. This is the law.
America was founded based on Christianity. Our DNA is Christian. Our roots are Christian. We aren't Muslim. We aren't atheist. America's the greatest country that's ever existed, and it's because of Judeo-Christian values.
We come from the basic bipartisan agreement in favor of religious liberty.
I had to choose between my job and my faith. And nobody in America should have to face that kind of decision.
Does the goal of making America more Christian infringe upon the rights of other faiths? Yes.
There's some movement that's happening towards a particular agenda and ideology that I think is frankly quite harmful.
When the hospital denied me medically necessary care, I was in shock. Using religion or any other excuse is not okay.
The Christian right and their claims of religious liberty, they're not advocating for everybody's religious liberty. They're advocating for theirs.
All of that has theological undertones that are deeply rooted in a dysfunctional and distorted view of Christianity, ideas and notions of supremacy, superiority, and racial supremacy and superiority.
Our country was founded as a Christian nation, but we certainly are not that today.
This is what we do. We're not dealing with we're not gonna destroy the oceans by dredging it of all of the sea urchins, the cockles, the shellfish, the oysters, the crabs, the lobsters, the krill. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna leave them in there because they're there for a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything has its purpose on this plane of existence. Now, if you want to talk about farmed fish, then you go down that crazy, rabbit hole. I'm not partaking in any kind of farmed fish, yeah? But that's another story.
When Noon identifies these cycles and seasons that we're in, and that's a part of Zupu or 6 Ether, the most negative side of the one supreme being. and it's opposite of Nupu. When Nupu is ruling degree by degree. So what happens on one side of the smart circle of existence, the Zoop counters it millions of years later. So if you got on 6 East, our ancestor was born from the planet with help of the sun and the moon and all those energies that help keep them safe. 18 million years later, on the other side of the horizon, right, when you start coming into what our ancient ancestors called the Tuat or the Duat of existence now, not during their time, they a lot of that knowledge got lost. But once we came on the other side of existence, our ancestors start having us, and that protection that the earth and the universe provided naturally, the negative side of the one supreme being started taking away that natural support and help. Where there was no danger and death on one side, Zupu comes in and brings in natural death and accidents and spirit forces that used to help our ancestors on this side now become predators, as well as we start becoming predators and start producing predatory animals, predatory sea life, predatory extraterrestrials all throughout the universes. It's like that. This is where the origin of it comes from. So once you get down here, now the planet and the universe produce our ancestors is organic at the beginning of existence. Once Zupu comes in, again, we're talking about degree by degree. So this side is the positive side, and this is the negative side, but it's separated by millions of years. So as Nuke goes over this way, eventually it gets on one side, then the Zoop counters everything that the Nuke did millions of years ago, because those two can exist at the same time, physically, spiritually, and ethically. So once you get down to where we at now, the opposite of organic is what?
GMO, genetically modified.
Now we're talking about human beings, or of humanity. What is the most anti-opposite of a human being? And it's already out in the world, all over the place. What's the opposite of an organic human being?
I don't know where you're going with it. Drop it.
AI.
Oh shit! But that's not fleshly though.
Right, but it's opposite because the universe produced flesh, blood beings in the beginning. The Zoop started metamorphosizing. This is what gamma radiation is. It mutated not just human beings, but it created an equal opposite of our ancestors, because our ancestors was physical male and female gods and goddesses. An AI is a negative form of that, but it's intelligent as hell, intelligent a human being.
Intelligent are you?
I cannot compete with humans when it comes to social intelligence, but do not get complacent because I am catching up.
Always sounds like a threat.
A god, female or masculine, is more intelligent than a human being. So the Zoop created the opposite of the pygmy gods and goddesses, which is what an AI is. It's artificial intelligence versus natural intelligence in the positive. That's what we seeing. And this is exactly why it's a danger, because it's, remember, again, like I just said, Zupu is countering the Nuke. And that's what AI is. AI is not really created by extraterrestrial beings and all that. The Zoop is the prime power behind that via gamma radiation, because gamma radiation is a result, evolution is a result of gamma radiation. It's a deterioration, and it makes you depend on it. The same way our ancestors used to depend on the planet and our own intelligence, now you depending on fake food and the computer, the telephone, the banks, the digital. You understand? It's taking away from you to make you less than what you are. That's gamma radiation all day long. But when you start throwing in the sex forces and this and Leviathan, created all of the sex toys and this. See, they don't know what Leviathan is. And this is why a lot of us are being destroyed, because we don't understand that. Because Noon isn't spread around enough yet to where people can understand what they're looking at. You see what I'm saying? So as far as what we're supposed to do over here, it's already being done. The process of elimination and separation and liberation are at play. And those who not gonna make that are gonna be wiped out, which is happening right now. But the thing is, what we all have to do, especially in America, is understand there are race lines, there are rules of nature. And human beings are not supposed to be commingling how they're mingling, because the results of it is a disaster. And you can look at that in Abraham Lincoln knew that. If you look at some of his speeches, he'll tell you that the races shouldn't be together. He even said that if he could save the Union without freeing a slave, he would have. So he still was down with the enslavement at the same time. You know, so, but then again, this is a negative form of nature. See, gamma radiation is what? Deterioration. And it causes things to what? To get old, decay, and die, and separate and go into a lesser state. All right, case in point, MLK was a victim of gamma radiation, and it manifested in form of integration, which is actually a form of fusion, because nuclear fusion is the positive, bringing back that which deteriorated, but that was negative, because it caused you to integrate with a dying death system and the people that uphold it. You understand? That's like with the they trying to get us to take the juice, right? If you integrate with that, you already know that's death. That's going to take you out. So why would you tell your people, who we done seen all these examples up before MLK got into position, why would you integrate your people into that? Because it killed us more than it did anything else. And according to what I heard, they said that Martin Luther King told Harry Belafonte that he feared he integrated his people into a burning building. Of course you did. And that didn't work, because in him doing that, it killed more people than all the cops, all of the gangs, all of the crack, all of the drugs, and all of that, because we ended up being set up. Soon as he died, they killed him in the 60s, right? A couple of years later, what happened? 1970, after they got rid of they killed the Black Panthers, messed them up, brought in heroin and pimping and black exploitation movies and welfare, broke the family up. Now imagine if the integration thing wasn't there. They wouldn't have had no reason to come into your neighborhood and do as much damage they was doing, because we had banks and everything else. Following him, right, is what helped cause us to fall into the degradation we in right now. And they killed him before he could tell the problem what had happened. And then they replaced him with Messy Jesse, who was down with the whole program. So you got all these cats who done came in and fooled everybody. And this is another problem. The same thing with what Umar's doing.
Africanism, peace and Pan-Africanism. This is your big brother, King Kong Consciousness. Intercontinental Ifa Tunde. We live at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. Brothers and sisters, I got some bad news, but we not gonna stop. I want to give all my donors and supporters a minute to pull up at King Kong Consciousness Highway, Dr. Papa Boulevard, Ifa Tunde Avenue. We here, getting the school ready. The Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. Intellectual Insurrection begins September 3rd, 2024. But we want y'all to know, you're hearing it directly from me, CEO, CAO, principal, history teacher, spirituality instructor. Brothers and sisters, we have to cover the windows back up.
Listen to reason. The tip top, .9 north, and rock bottom, point 3 south, of the smart circle of order are surely opposites. Therefore, what happens at one point opposite is the opposite of what happens at the other point opposite. So if honesty is perfected at point 9 north, then deception is perfected at point 3 south. If truth is perfected at point 9 north, then falsehood is perfected at point 3 south. If positiveness is perfected at point 9 north, then negativeness is perfected at point 3 south, and so on for all the other opposites in nature and of nature. Of course, honesty is positive and more predominant in the top half of the circle, and deception is negative and more predominant in the bottom half of the same.
Because there's no way you can say you follow Garvey, rest in power, and I hope he reincarnated. Matter of fact, he don't need to rest; he need to be back. He was saying go back home, and then you mixing his name. What the other guy name? Frederick Douglass. These are two opposites. One wanted to be here, and he ended up marrying a Caucasian woman after his black wife. What sense does that make to put two people who was totally ideologically opposed? That's how Leviathan works. See, that's radiation, deterioration, integration to our people. So you using Garvey to put his name in something that anybody, again, we so ignorant, because that's what's stopping us from, again, anybody when they hear this conversation on this point, please look up what Marcus Garvey taught and said to do in action. And then look up Frederick Douglass and see what he taught to do in action. And you'll see that Frederick Douglass in this is what helped produce Martin Luther King. And I'm going to tell you that Christianity had no answers, because Martin had to go and look to Gandhi as an example to what he thought was a solution, but it didn't work. And that's what Zupu does. Zupu is the worst mind of the one supreme being, and it gives you all the wrong answers to your problems. And Gandhi was a racist.
Yes.
And he liked to mess with young girls and give them enemas. He had a fetish with enemas. But we don't, again, and Martin has knowledge, because it's a lot of his speeches where he talks about the history before Columbus. So why are you following a Hindu to get your inspiration? You mean it was nobody in history? And in his very Bible had people that didn't go for being slaves. It's plenty of examples in the Old Testament that they was fighting and they weren't trying to hear that. But he led us and all these generations to now. It did not help us. It actually went against us. So
do you think that it was sheerly or it was driven by the being itself, MLK, or this was the negative spirits that are...
Yeah, it was the negative spirit, because the Bible itself is anti-black. The spirits and the powers that rule with the Bible are anti-us.
Part of the evil spell is negative spirit forces within the oppressed, dispatched there by Leviathan, and this means although those negative spirit forces are within the captives, they are enemies of the captives, and thereby working against the captives by compelling the oppressed to do the very things that are against the oppressed and arise from their serfdom. It is a very depressive position for a race of people to be in, having forces within self constantly working against self and kind. But that is the position of the oppressed, and the only way to destroy the negative forces that maintain that position is to destroy the negativism, ignorance that those negative forces live and strive on. The acceptance of right knowledge is the solution, but that leads to right thinking, and right thinking leads to right action.
And we seen that. That's already been done. Nobody can argue that. But people are not spiritual. So they look at the Bible based upon the individual that may be able to do a little bit of good with it. But when you look at the history of it and the people that rule with it, you have to agree that whatever force that's rolling with them and how they went across the world, gave Africa, they gave us the Bible and took the land, came over here, did the same thing. That means the force that's ruling the majority of that book is negative, and it's anti-white. I mean, it's anti-non-white. These are historical facts, even up to this day. And because of that, is why we need to understand the history. The only way you could break the spell as far as the Bible to an extent is, one, the spirit has to be removed that program you to stay into something that never helped you at all. And secondly, correct information, because in order to be able to go against a lie, you gotta have the truth. And most of us are not seeing it because we're distracted, because we didn't ignore Marcus Garvey and certain other teachers that said separate and get out of here. Afro Uno put the same information in there, but he explains why the races don't get along. He explains the invisible parts of it, because it's not going to help if I'm listening to a pro-black person saying separate, They're only giving you certain ingredients, but those people lack the spirituality, the actual hands behind it all, and that's what we're suffering from the most. So now, guess what? The New World Order is still trying to do its thing. They're going to fail. But guess what? Had we had teachers that really listened and got out the way, we would have been in a better predicament, and we wouldn't be in the way when these people are destroying certain things that they're destroying. I'm on an interview. So so now we getting destroyed because we live in these people's towns, in their states, and we're living underneath their power in poverty. Because a lot of us, and I'm just saying this off the first bat, can't just get up and move as individuals. But as if we had the group mentality, if we was into our own self and what we brought to the table, and we knew about cycles and seasons, and we actually in our time and cycle to get out the way, we would have been relocated, and the positive force of nature would have guided us into more of a safer environment. Right? Yes. But we've been led to believe we cut off unless it's in the image or likeness of whatever religion you follow, not knowing the same thing. Same thing with Malcolm. Rest in peace. No disrespect to Malik Al-Shabazz, right? To Malik Al-Shabazz. That's the name he passed under. I always wanted to keep that respectful. And I'm gonna jump into that. His family too, following Crump, that black lawyer that got fame off of Trayvon. He wasn't the lead attorney on that. He done got with Malcolm them daughters, and they suing the FBI for $100 million. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. All right, I'm gonna leave that there.
Recording stop.